How is AI going to positively impact our travel businesses? And are there any potential downsides we should be thinking about? Welcome to the Masters in Travel podcast. I'm Whitney, owner of Undiscovered Sunsets and The Hive. This is a podcast for us, by us, where we have deep conversations with honest answers. Nothing is off limits here. Here with me today to discuss the potential of AI in travel and specifically how it's going to affect travel advisors. I think that that's a clear distinction because the way that it's going to affect airlines and consumers is a totally different conversation. Is David Shull, CEO of Tern. David, welcome.
Thanks, Whitney. It's so good to be back on the podcast and so excited to be talking about one of my favorite topics right now, which is AI. It's going to be fun.
Yes. So I feel like AI applications just in the world, in the universe, in our daily lives, like it's something that's being talked about on a really regular basis. And I feel like almost weekly, whether it's in news or another podcast I'm listening to or in a Facebook group, like AI is being mentioned. And when it comes, like, there's all these real world applications of like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, this is how it's going to impact that industry and this industry. But when it comes to our industry as travel advisors, I feel like the application that I hear most often is how to something to the effect of how to create a social media plan or like draft Instagram captions really quick, like 30 Instagram captions in 3 minutes. And while this is helpful, I've seen it in action. It
Yeah.
works. I know people who use it, and I can absolutely see how this is a time saver. It's been at least a year that like AI has been a buzzword. And I feel like there's got to be more that is going to impact the travel advisor universe other than captions and how do I respond to this difficult email and like these type of chat GPT things. So I feel like we haven't fully tapped into the potential of how this is going to impact
I
our
would agree.
day-to-day life as a travel advisor.
Yes, I could not agree more. And I think there's a lot of pieces of that. So just actually got back from this kind of tech venture capital conference. And obviously you think AI is common buzzword in the travel industry. I mean, that was all anybody could talk about.
Yep.
And one of the framings I thought that was really helpful is this kind of underlying AI technology, large language models, LLMs, people have probably heard them called, uh, are really like the engine for enabling a lot of these different kind of AI experiences that people are seeing. And then you've got one of the ways that people can interact with that, which is chat, right? And that's where ChatGPT really, I think, caught a
Right.
lot of people's imagination. And if you think a lot about these use cases, generating the Instagram titles, even things like, and we'll probably get into to why I think this is going to be a risky area long term for travel AI startups. But
Mhm.
generate an itinerary for this location,
Yeah.
help me write this email. All those are actually that kind of like chat based experience.
Yep. Mhm.
And I think about that as almost as like AI like 1.0. It's not
Sure.
tailored to any industry. It's not tailored to any particular workflows, and we haven't yet seen AI kind of molded into the the workflow tools that travel advisors could actually benefit from in a really like kind of tailored bespoke way. And so it doesn't surprise me that that's where a lot of the focus has been, because that's what's available with these kind of off the shelf tools. But I think what we'll start to see, and hopefully Turn can play a role in this, is that like companies will actually start to say, how does this underlying LLM technology unlock a new era of efficiency for the travel advisor? And that's when you have a new interface combined with this technology that enables a whole new workflow, that things start to get really exciting.
Okay. So is that technology something that is currently available and just hasn't been applied to our day-to-day workflow, or it's not yet available? So we're just kind of like watching how this evolves and how it's eventually going to kind of get to us, let's say.
Yeah, so it is available, and it's actually the same technology that kind of powers the Chat GPT. And so I'll try and use an actual example here. So let's one of the things we think is going to be really transformational for travel advisors is manual data entry. This was something that from the
Yeah.
first ASTA conference I went to, I was just shocked by how many times advisors are like entering data into different websites.
I
And
was just in your Facebook group of like, please, please, this manual data entry is gonna be the death of me. Fix it.
I mean, it's insane. And like we actually today in one of our meetings, like had one of our designer kind of walk through, like, okay, let's say you want to take something from this website and you want to put it in a proposal for a client. Like, let's do that together. And it was painful. I mean, it's like copy and pasting and figuring out the dates and like entering in the description and like going, but
My fingers just, like, copy paste in the middle of the night, they just that's all they
it's
do all day
just,
long is copy paste.
I believe it. And I think it's like you imagine what you could be doing with that time if
Yeah.
you never had to do manual data entry, right? And I think
Oh my gosh.
that's where like the technology's there. You could think about you take if you copy and pasted all the text from that website and you paste it into ChatGPT and you started asking it questions about that text, it could answer it based on what you've copy and pasted in, right? But that's now actually, and so like let's say you're looking at a Viator link, you like copy and paste that full description, you paste it in ChatGPT, and you ask it a question of where does this tour depart from? ChatGPT would actually be able to say, here's the answer. You could ask it, what
Okay.
time does this tour depart? And ChatGPT would be able to look through that text and say, like, here's the answer.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's like the technology as it works today, but it doesn't actually help you move it from Viator into a itinerary builder. And
Right,
that's
and,
where
like, look nice and
and look
be presentable and formatted properly and
right.
yeah, yeah,
S but you can see like the tech, and so that's where we think these technologies can actually start to layer in basically that translation mechanism, and we start to use that open AI or the large language models as that translation, so that you either paste in the text or we can paste in the text, and instead of asking those specific questions from OpenAI, we say we want this to be structured in this way, and by asking it to do that, it basically says, okay, cool. Like I'm going to go pull out all that data. I'm going to put it in the structure, and that structure matches exactly what we need in turn. So what does that mean? You can take any website, any previous itinerary, any PDF that DMCs have sent you, and you can just give it to the AI, and the AI will say, okay, cool. You've given me a bunch of text. I'm going to structure it in the right way, and it just automatically populates in your itinerary builder. It's doing that translation, that manual data entry for you. And so I think that's the example where the tech is there. That's where these LLMs have been so game changing. But stringing all these pieces together is where it actually starts to unlock time savings in a way that's transformational.
So, if I understand correctly, the technology is there, the need and the desire for it on the travel advisor side is obviously there, and it's kind of someone like you and your team that is needed to come in and kind of be like, "Well, the tech exists, we know how to use it. We understand that there's a need over here, so let us manipulate the current technology to actually bring this to life and make it work."
Exactly. And I think there's a learning curve. And what's kind of weird about AI compared to any other technology is that even the people that make it, like at OpenAI, and you look at Tesla is actually doing a lot in terms of like AI driving, they don't really understand how it works. I mean, they understand like conceptually, like, okay, like it's learning in these ways. But when you get that output, it's impossible to point to like, okay, this was the input that actually led to this output. Um,
Right.
because it's just kind of learning on its own. And that sounds a little creepy. And obviously you can put guardrails in place, but like there's a kind of ambiguity to how these things work. So why
Yeah.
does that matter? Um, we have to figure out how to like massage the prompts and get the prompts into to be to kind of coax the AI into doing the right thing. And so that's where a lot of our learning is right now. It's like, okay, how do you take these generic itineraries and actually reliably move it into this? How do you prevent hallucinations where the AI just like makes stuff up, right? There's like all
Mhm.
these things where it's a little bit of a learning curve, but that's where we're investing the time to get that right so that you have this translation layer that, like you said, solves the need that the advisor has, ties in this new technology, and kind of just like make I think in a lot of ways, as an advisor, we've done our jobs well if you don't really even know that you're interacting with AI. If the thing just kind
Right.
of like works, right? And
Right. And then it's like,
um, yeah,
how did you why don't other CRMs do that? Or how did you get that to work? It's like, "Oh, we're using AI." I agree. Like if you don't even understand or necessarily realize that that's what's happening behind the scenes, that's what I think is the potential of AI in the travel industry that I don't feel like, and myself included, that I fully understand. So like when you hear AI in the travel industry, like, are there some specific, like, use cases that we probably haven't even thought of that you're like, "I think this could be possible. Like, this is what we're gonna try to do." Is that too vague of a question?
no, I mean, I think
I
there's
feel
a
like
lot
I
of
still have like horse blinders on like what's possible with AI. And I think
yeah.
I don't even fully understand or grasp the potential.
I'll try and give you just like I think that is I think that is very fair because I think to be like there's a lot to learn, right? I think that there are probably infinite possibilities, but in some ways where everybody is still learning like what are those options. So maybe two opposite ends of the spectrum where I think this could become really interesting. So one, we talked a little bit about just the manual data entry. I'll broaden that to say one of the number one things we get asked about is supplier integrations, right? Like, do you have an integration with XYZ supplier? There's limitless suppliers
Yeah.
that we could integrate with. And those
I have a
integrations
list
are
of 15,000 and growing, David. It's limitless.
you know, right? I
It
mean,
just
it's just
never stops.
and it's like overwhelming. And we could spend the next decade and it
Yeah.
building just these integrations, and we still wouldn't be done.
Yep.
What AI will let us do is take any content from any supplier and automatically parse it into Tern. Like there's integration. You give us a website of a cruise line that's not in our database, like we'll just parse it into Tern. Like you have a DMC that created a custom itinerary, we'll just parse it into Tern. So in a lot of ways, we will. I genuinely believe that 90% of the data entry that advisors do today just goes away, just gone. And I think that's really exciting for this industry because I think it frees up a lot of time to focus on the relationships and the things that matter. Um, and I'll touch on the marketing piece too. I'm like kind of I think one of the traps with AI. I think we'll get to this later. Um, the way that these models work is basically averages. This is a way of oversimplification, but if I told you we were going to talk about hotels and I said the Ritz and asked you to fill in the next word, you could probably fill in the next word. Most people are probably thinking the Ritz Carlton, right? And so that's kind of like how these AI models work. They just ingest massive amounts of text and then use math to figure out, like, given this, what's likely to come next. And so everything's sort of an average, which means if you ask it for an itinerary, you're going to get the average itinerary. And
Right,
like
right.
and so marketing and like emails and like all of these things, if you ask it for like 10 marketing slogans, like
Yeah.
it's going to feel like the blandest slogan that you can come up with, and you can coax it into being more creative. But I think there is a risk with some of these, like generate my marketing, or I'm just going to outsource all my marketing to AI. But I think there's an application layer where a service can help connect the dots between what makes travel advisors really special and what makes them advisors over agents, which is like their understanding, the experiences they have, like the destinations that they know, like the back of their hands, and the stories that, when told authentically to want to be travelers, convert. And so here's a vision. I don't know if we'll actually build this or not, but I'd love to someday. It's on the immediate roadmap. But like you go on a fam trip and you've got the Tern app, and it's kind of guiding you through, like you're taking pictures, like it's asking for like voice notes and being like, what's your favorite part, what's your least favorite part, I don't know, all the things behind the scenes. Tern's feeding that to an AI. We're translating your voice into text. We're then having AI take your tone, your style, the way that you spoke, and we're
Oh
having
my
it actually
gosh.
start to write 30 blog posts with pictures saying, like, here's who it's good for, here's what's not good for, here's like my favorite meal that I ate. And now you have like authentic content that tells your story with seconds of work, not having to type anything, but that, like, I think will convert far better than like write me a generic blog
Oh,
post about the Turks and Caicos.
you're taking the ideas straight out of my brain, except you've just like put them on steroids with AI. I had we had an AI kind of keynote presentation last fall at our host agency event. And just it, I don't maybe she wasn't even talking, it was not even AI specifically, but what I realized is like what I could do is kind of the voice note effect as well of like recording a podcast. We're recording right now. And if I wanted, I could generate a transcript of this afterwards. And so I was like, why don't I just, it's far easier for me to just chat for 30 minutes about a trip that I go on or about a destination or about a hotel than to sit down and like type it all out. And I was like, why don't I just record myself, turn it into a transcript, give that to my marketing person so she's got my words, my sentiments, everything. And then she can turn that into captions and blogs. And you've just taken it a step further to say, take out the marketing person altogether and AI can do it. And I've also been wondering of like if something like that, like again, no promises, we're not building this right now. Like this is like a pipe dream. If something like this would be possible for the hive. That
Yeah.
if like while I'm at a site inspection or while I'm at like staying at a property or while I just got off the phone with my client, I'm saying, this property is perfect for this. I wouldn't recommend it for this client profile. For make sure to note down there's tons of stairs and like, wow, the views are incredible. Definitely ask for this room category. You have to go to the bar and order this drink. And I'm voice noting all of this. And then the hive essentially like fills in the feedback and the rating. And it's like,
Yep.
is this what you wanted to say? Yes, post.
Yep.
Post. Done.
Done. Exactly.
Instead of adding it to my to-do list to be like, add my notes to the hive when I get home tonight and I'm too tired to do it, you know?
Exactly. Well, that's like so two, I think, things to emphasize there. One, I think that and this is like, you listen to a lot of these, kind of tech podcasts, and I think that the kind of primary modality of chat to interact with AI is a placeholder. Like, humans aren't actually that good at like typing, even the fastest typers, right? It's like, it's kind of clunky. We've learned to adapt to it over the past 30 to 40 years, but like, it's far faster to just talk, right? To have a
Yes,
conversation.
it really is. And more authentic.
Exactly. And like, you get the tone and all the things. And so I think you'll start to see more voice as a way to interact with these AI assistants. And like, that's what, you've got now AI that can take voice and convert it into text. And then you've got these large language models, which can take text and like restructure it.
Yep.
And so that's very doable, right? Today, like, you could take voice and convert to text and have it say like, I need this structure to import into the hive. And AI can just do that for you. And, and so that's going to be that's going to be pretty exciting, and I think it's going to be pretty important, because AI will disrupt, maybe not disrupt. I think AI is going to further enhance people's like BS meter, if you will, like, and
Sure.
and if it feels like it was written by AI, if it doesn't feel authentic, if it doesn't actually bring some like human story into it, then like, it's just kind of worthless, because they could
Mhm.
generate all their own stuff on AI without that, right? Like,
Right.
so I think that kind of human component is actually going to become even more important in this AI
Mhm.
world than it has been.
I love that. So, can we go back to the manual data entry a point for a second?
Yes,
I'm just thinking through like my entire workflow and all of the manual data entry that is involved. Um, so if I say a couple things, will you try to translate that into like what an AI application might do for that?
would
Because I
love
don't
that.
know that I can like clearly
Yes,
create the bridge by myself. Okay. So I think I have some complicated questions, but I'm going to say those. I'm going to make it easy. So when we get to like we've created the proposal, you already gave some really great ideas of like here's a proposal from a DMC, get it into turn, like that's a great like AI model. But then the clients are like, yep, we're good to go. And I'm like, okay, there's 8 of you. I need you to fill out 8 client profiles, including all of your passport information and all of your names and all of your allergies and all of your things. I need you to do that for me. And then I'm going to copy paste it into an email to the DMC to share all of the information that you just shared with me. And so I'm literally just the copy paste machine in the middle to make sure that they have the information that they need. Like, how is AI going to help ameliorate this situation?
yeah. So I think one of the other, um, just kind of points that we're at right now in the AI hype cycle is that when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And I actually think that's a really good example of, I don't know that I would use AI. Like, we will solve that problem at turn, but it won't necessarily be through AI. Like, the
Okay,
easy
gotcha. Okay,
like, and I'll use an example of like the answer is like, clients should have a profile. They should be able to add all those things in once, update them when they change, and then you should just have a button that you can send a PDF to the
just
DMC.
share.
Like,
Just
yeah,
share it securely. Just give them everything.
yeah. And so that's like, actually, like, let's just bring the
That
travel
seems
industry
simple
into
to
like
me.
web
Like
2.0. Like, let's just digitize that. And then like, let's figure out where we add AI. So that
okay,
will be
okay, okay.
fixed. But and that's kind of a non-AI answer, but that's how I think about
No, but
that
I think
problem.
that that's valid of like, is this like an AI question? And you're sitting here saying it's not AI. So then my question is like, well, why can't we already do this?
It's a fantastic question. I do not have a good answer for that. I think actually it was in the Facebook group. You mentioned that. I was just like, I sent that. I was like, we should just build this. Like, we
Like,
have all the data. We should just build the
because
export.
basically it used to be me and now it's my assistant when we want to book flights for the air desk. The air desk needs to know full names, dates of birth, dates of travel. Like, that's a little bit separate from the client profile, but then all the loyalty numbers, all the global entry numbers. And so we're literally copy pasting everything. And if it's for a couple, then it's like, okay, it takes, 90 seconds. Like, it's not that big of a deal. But then suddenly it's for a family of 8. And then suddenly we're booking 300, 400, 500 tickets a year. And suddenly it's like,
Mm.
why at
Yeah.
scale? Like, this doesn't. And then we get to the DMC, and the DMC needs all the exact same information plus allergies and mobility concerns. And are they celebrating anything and special preferences? And then the DMC has their own form that they want you to fill out to like match their workflow, but then I refuse and I just say like, here's what you need.
Yeah.
But again,
You
it's
do.
and it's just like there has got to be a better way to share this.
Yeah, and I think so where I do think AI starts to come into that. So you mentioned like the air desk, right? And I don't know, depending on what that looks like. I know there's potentially many different data structures that these third
Sure.
parties or these different people that you're interacting with have, right? So I need this information that you have in your CRM in this format.
Yeah.
Um, and that's actually where AI can help, right? Because
Sure.
you may have the information, but if it's not in the right format, you still have to do the data entry.
Because then
But
they're copy pasting again into the format that they need.
yeah. So that in a perfect world there, you'd like train an AI to basically be the translator where it's like, I have this information. It's, click a button and like, here's the format that I need it in. And AI is just like, cool, like rearrange and here it is.
Okay.
I
That
don't,
makes
I don't
sense.
know if this will be part of your workflow, but like there's a lot of that in email, right? When you think about like email to these other systems and like that type of thing, like this kind of translation of one format to another, AI is a really good way to do that because you don't have to program. It used to be you had to program explicitly every single conversion. Like this needs to go here, this needs to go here, which is super expensive. It takes a long time. It's fragile because if anything like changes, then the whole thing breaks. Now you could just tell AI, like, I have this data and I want it in this format. And it's just like, got it. Here it is.
Hmm. Okay. I think more copy pasting and manual data entry comes with like payments and credit cards and things like this. So when it's a simple flights DMC trip protection kind of invoice or trip, it's easy. It doesn't take that much time. But then again, at scale, it all adds up. But when I really start to feel the friction currently is when I say yes to piecing together a trip and I'm legitimately entering in the same credit card details and billing address and all this stuff 25 times.
Ugh. Yeah. In 25 different websites, like,
Yep. Mhm.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Different hotel websites, different transfer websites, different tour websites, different airline. Yep.
Yeah. I think, I think AI will help with that. I'm still trying to wrap my head around how. I think there's probably two ways. One is like you start to have these AI agents that can actually go and start to interact with websites. And so you can imagine like they can spin up these bots and go and kind of do that on your behalf. I think that's maybe a little ways out, like maybe a year or two, just because the level of trust you have to have in them getting it right needs to be really
Mhm.
high, right? Because if
Yeah,
it goes
yeah,
wrong, your booking is not booked and it's a problem, or it books 10 times and now your client's been charged 10
sure.
times. And like so you got to make sure the accuracy is really high, and where AI is maybe not perfect today is accuracy. And we've all seen the
Mhm.
headlines of like where AI went wrong. So you should generally a good rule of thumb is that you should use AI anytime you're okay with it being like 80 to 90% accurate. And that means
Sure.
that most of the times you're using AI, you should double check it. But I do think long term, again, not necessarily AI, but I think AI will play a role. Like Hopper actually does a lot of really interesting things with machine learning and AI in terms of like pricing and like that type of thing. I think we would love to get to a world where booking is integrated into Turn, and that won't solve all the like edge cases, but that starts to become a way to reduce that friction. Again,
Yeah,
that's a ways out, but
yeah.
yeah.
So what are some other mm, manual data entry use cases that like that we're doing? every day that you think AI is going to help with?
So I think a lot of it, one of the areas that we're very excited about, and by the time this podcast comes out, we'll have, I think, released a solution for, is the idea of how much time advisors spend in their email, and like,
Okay.
and uh, how much. So examples of that. One is like, I get 300 emails a day. How do I know which ones are actually the most important? Um, AI could help categorize that. You give it the sender, the subject line, like those types of things. It could actually say, like, here are the 10 emails that we think are really important. Here are the three of those that are confirmation emails that you should import. Then you get into the import phase, and and when I think about the import phase, it's, I just booked this hotel. It's associated with a trip that I'm planning in my CRM itinerary builder. How do I get the confirmation details and the documents and that information into the CRM? It's manual, right? And it
I'll
could
tell
be
you how
like,
we do it currently.
yeah, tell me, I'd love to hear it. What's the current flow?
The current flow is that for anything that I'm booking on a really regular basis, like a Black Lane a transfer or a Viator or Project Expedition tour, Allianz policies, things like this, that the subject line is like always similar and predictable. I have an automation set up so that it goes directly to my assistant's folder. And so she just gets like bombarded with like, 10 or 20 confirmations all at once. Um, so she gets it. She will save the PDF to our Google Drive to the client's folder for that trip. She will then categorize and save that email to the folder that is needed. She will then go to Travify and upload the confirmation and add in all of the details that are necessary. Then she will go to Sion and add in that we have a new booking and that it's commissionable and all of those details. And then she will go to TravelJoy for the invoice and update like what's been paid and make sure that it show that it's been paid. So she's going step by step by step by step for every single confirmation that
Wow.
comes in. And I've probably forgotten things because I've delegated it to her. And
I-
she'd probably be like, what are those other three steps you left
yeah.
out? But it's all download, name the file in this way, upload here, add to here, go over here, cross check this. And then even after we do all of that and we have like a very streamlined process, then there's still like the audit double checking at the end that she goes through everything one more time. I go through everything one more time and then we send it to the client. So like it
Wow.
is a lot of time that we are spending doing it, but then checking and double checking it.
That I'm gonna have to like pull that snippet out, and just anytime someone's like, "Why does Turn exist?" To be like, "This is why Turn exists." So I'll tell you how this. By the time this podcast comes out, I'll tell you how it works in Turn.
Oh my
So
gosh, I'm so excited.
we are directly connecting to emails. So whether you use Outlook or Exchange or Google, like, we will have a direct connection to your emails. Highly secure. We've been deeply vetted by Google security team to make sure that we are protecting that data. But what that lets us do is that you can just access your emails in Turn. So when that confirmation email comes in, it shows up in Turn, and you'll be able to see the email and click, this is associated with this trip. This is the activity on the trip. Turn will then automatically parse out any documents or the text of that email and say, it looks like it's got a confirmation number. Here's a receipt. I'm suggesting that we upload this document to the documents tab of that activity, and that we fill out these information fields, confirmation number, dates, like description based on the email. And so in 2 clicks, that whole workflow that you described of like forwarding it to your assistant and then having them like enter it into these systems just goes away. Like, and now that email is marked as triaged, you don't have to think about it again, but it's linked to that activity. So when you go through the audit phase, you can see it, and that document is automatically stored in the trip automatically. And you could decide if you want that to be visible to the travelers or not. But everything is now integrated, um, and you can start to do that across. This is a perfect, like, this technology would have been incredibly difficult to build reliably before AI.
Okay.
You see examples of like itinerary, like, or confirmation parsers, but they're super fragile because, like, if the subject line changes or if
Yep.
they like change the format of the email, the whole thing breaks because
Yeah.
it's hard coded to expect this format.
Right.
And we all know how much things change, and like, especially in travel, with AI, we can just give it the details. We can say, hey, this is a confirmation email. I need you to create a flight activity for it. I need you to update the confirmations or put the seat numbers in automatically. Like, all of that
Right.
can just be done with 2 clicks. And eventually we'll get it down to 0 clicks, but we're starting now with a human kind of saying which flight, or what trip and which activity should this be associated with?
Yeah.
Because again, accuracy. But then the
Yep.
rest of that content is like very, very good and very fast at pulling that into the right structure.
So that's really exciting. Will will it soon, or is it possible in the future that that confirmation also kind of connects to like the invoice for the trip in turn to be like you have a confirmation, which means either there's a credit card guarantee involved or a payment has been made. Um,
Updating the payment status. So that's what this whole, like, it ties into the credit card authorization. And so we absolutely think about that. Like, that's how we know the activity's in there, because it's probably already been authorized. And so when we update that, we can just mark it as paid. And that's where I think I will say there's a really interesting opportunity to complete that last leg of the system, right? We talk about like the commission, reconciliation,
yep.
and management, right? I think that there's been a lot of precedent in this industry for none of these systems talking to each other. But like, how cool would
Hmm.
it be if that just like automatically updated your back office system to say like, here's a commissionable event and all the details that they need to reconcile it?
Cool is an understatement. Like
Be pretty
if
sweet.
but because right now, like my Slack is full of, hey, this came in. Is this commissionable? At what percent is this commissionable? Does this need to be added here? Has it been paid or has it been confirmed with a credit card guarantee? And it's like my assistant is learning how to know all of these answers, but the truth is that she can't always know all of the answers. Sometimes only the person doing it can actually really know all of the answers. And so there's still a lot of back and forth required to kind of make sure that things are accurate. And so when a confirmation comes in, it's almost if AI or the system or whatever it is asks me, it's like this itinerary, this activity, commissionable, yes or no, paid or confirmed. Like there's a difference there.
Yep.
If I could just be like click, 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 go, and it just does what it needs to do in the itinerary, in the invoice, and in some sort of back office commission tracking. I mean,
We'll be there by the
holy
end of the year
crap.
for sure, if not by June.
I love the end of the year or by June. You do know that there's 6 months between June and the end
I,
of the
I
year,
said
right?
I've gotten feedback from my team. I need to build in a buffer, so I'm saying the end of the year could be by June.
I'm sure they're all rolling now, just
Yeah,
dying. Um,
exactly.
no, that's so this to me, I feel like there's a lot of AI conversation around the jobs that AI is going to take away.
Yep.
And what I actually get really excited when I hear about this because my assistant's not going anywhere. I
Hmm.
still need her very much. But what my brain goes to is like, think of all the things I'll have time to do now, and her as well, when
Yes.
this stuff is taken off. Because the data entry and the manual parts of our workflow, like it has to happen and it needs to get done. But that is certainly not the best use of our brain power.
Could not agree more. And I was kind of thinking about some of these questions ahead of time. I was reminded one of my favorite articles in tech is called, in startups in particular, is called Give Away Your Legos. And it's basically this article about how when you're like in an early stage company, you do everything, right? And so but then if you find success, you start to grow and you actually need to do less. And it's this really weird emotional thing that happens when it's like, I used to do that thing and now I'm giving it to somebody else. But like, I feel like that makes me less important. And
Yep.
that's a very natural thing and a very
Mhm.
hard thing for a lot of people to overcome. But like you said, the right way to look at it is like, now I get to do things that are even higher impact or that have higher
Mm.
value. And I think that is what AI is going to do in a lot of ways to the travel industry, is that an advisor, maybe acting more like an agent, and you see your primary value as making booking easier for your clients, your AI will be hard for you, because AI is going to make booking even easier on the consumer side. And if that's your primary value that you're competing on, that value delta is not going to be as great in
Right.
the next 6, 12, 18 months.
Right.
But I think most advisors are advisors, right? Their value is from the
Mhm.
like destination knowledge, the experience, I and like the human component, the relationships they have with the different people in their networks. Like, that's not going to be replaced by AI. And I'll give two very quick examples of why I deeply believe that to be the case. When I was transitioning out of Handshake, I had an opportunity to take like a sabbatical, went on this amazing Windstar cruise in French Polynesia. And one of the most memorable experiences of any travel experience I've ever had was I was like coming down from to the water sports platform, and the water sports coordinator was like, "Oh my gosh, David! Like I've been waiting all week. Where it's great conditions. I know you want to go wakeboarding. Let's go wakeboard." And I was just like, "Whoa!" Like that person remembered me. They knew who I was. They cared enough to be like excited to see me. And you will not get that feeling from AI. Like it's just not
Right.
going to happen. You know that
Right.
it's programmed to like watch everything. And I think that there's like so many analogies in travel of like why that will be true and why the travel advisor that's going to free up their time, like you said, to create those connections, to create those highly curated experiences, and to know the details that make the difference. And
Mhm.
this is the second example that I'll give. I don't actually remember who I was talking to. I was talking to an advisor, and they were talking about Virgin Voyages, and they're like using this example of why we were talking about why so many cruises are booked through travel advisors, and they're like, "Well, I'll give you an example. Like, these numbers are going to be wrong, but like, there's like 15 different types of cabins on your average Virgin voyage,
Yeah.
and most people they think about a Virgin voyage, they think about that cool hammock on the balcony, and turns out, though, there's actually a subset of balconies that are cheaper that don't have the hammocks. And they don't actually tell you they don't have the hammocks. And so you just book that online because it's the cheapest price. And guess what? The thing that you envisioned doing is now not there. And it totally changes the perception that you have. If you worked with the,
100%.
but if you worked with advisor, they would be like, oh, hopefully they would be like, oh, actually, like I know it's cheaper. I know it's the shiny object, but like actually it's worse in these ways. I asked ChatGPT in preparation for this. I was like, what are the best cabins on Virgin Voyages? Guess what? It didn't even mention the red
Hammocks.
hammocks. And so I think that's an example of like the details, the information, knowing what people care about, the human connection is not going anywhere. And if you as an advisor double down on that and you give away the Legos of this like manual work, if you're like
Mhm.
willing to experiment with AI, if you recognize that like filling your day with manual work is not what makes your job valuable and you embrace the human component, you will crush it in this market.
Well, and I also think that in addition to giving away the Legos, which I like the analogy, and it is a really it's a hard thing to grasp as someone who has put in all the blood, sweat, and tears for so many years, and then suddenly it's time to give that away. I'm excited at the prospect of not just delegating and like hiring someone to do it, because that's what I've currently done now. And yes, it's helpful. It's also really expensive.
Yeah.
And I also don't think that I fully tapped into her potential because she's also a really smart, capable person. And she's just doing all the things that I currently have delegated for her. It's like, what more could she accomplish? And what more could we accomplish together if some of this manual data stuff was taken off her plate? So it's not just the giving away of the Legos, but it's like, can technology just manage these Legos a whole lot better than humans can? Because if they could, that'd be great. Here
Yeah.
you go, technology.
And that's like that is the art here is like figuring out, and this is where I've been talking to my team. I'm like, I want all of you to be experimenting with different parts of your job because like AI and technology is not going to replace all Legos. But and we don't really know. We're so early in this new tech that we don't really know what Legos is it going to take on and what Legos can it do part of, to stretch the analogy, and
Mhm.
like what is it just need to be doing by humans. But I plus your point so strongly around the how this is going to help, particularly I think newer advisors to the industry who like aren't making enough money to be able to necessarily quit their
Mhm.
full-time job, but they like really want to see this through, but they can't justify the like time to do all the manual work. You start to take away a lot of that, and I think we're actually going to be able to see a lot more advisors making that transition from kind of like unwilling hobbyists, like they would love to be doing it full time but haven't got there
Yeah.
yet, to
Mhm.
like actually being able to run their bit, like to build a successful business. And I think there's a big chasm today that is in a lot of ways related to bad tooling and a lack of time. And hopefully AI and systems like Turn can help with both of those things.
So we've talked a lot about like what AI can kind of do for us or drastically optimize and make more efficient. But I believe that there are also opportunities where AI is going to like create new opportunities for travel advisors in the way that we're going to be able to do things that like we're not even currently doing them. It's not an efficiency question. It's like, oh, pretty soon or someday I'm going to be able to do XYZ, and that is something that I can't possibly do today because AI is going to support it and you need that support. I don't know if I'm describing that scenario very well, but like, are
Yeah.
you tracking enough of what I'm
Yes.
trying to describe to kind of do you agree with that? Do you think that's possible? And if yes, like what are some of those possibilities that you
I think
see?
I think I think this is probably the most exciting frontier because I don't think, certainly we don't have a perfect idea of all the ways that this will evolve, but I agree that we're just getting started and there will be entirely new workflows. And I think one um, is like this idea of support, right? And how do we, you hear this all the time, right? I'm an advisor based on, West Coast. I've got clients in Europe. They wake up at 9 a.m. and are like, couldn't remember like where to find their transfer. And so they like call me. It's like, that's annoying. Now I'm up at 3 a.m. and it's in the itinerary.
Yep.
But, or like, and maybe it's more serious, like a flight just got canceled, right?
Yep.
I think you start to combine, and that example, if it's in the itinerary, like all the information about the trip should be the itinerary. Like you look at how much data and content advisors are kind of painstakingly putting into this one repository. I think we'll be in a world eventually where every advisor has this kind of like AI that provides 24/7 support to their clients. It knows everything
Interesting.
about their travel, their trip. So like they type in the message like, actually your transfer will pick you up on the corner of these two streets at 9:15 a.m. Look for a sign from like Ricardo, like, and that, because it's just in the itinerary, it's just making it more accessible through these other modalities. And so I think, and then it'll escalate. It'll be smart enough to say, okay, this is actually a flight cancellation. I don't have the ability to auto rebook a flight. I need to ping Whitney and be like, you got to get up for this because there's actually an emergency. But that whole long tail of things that aren't actually emergencies, but clients think are emergencies, can probably
Yeah.
be handled by this. And we're toying with this, and it's different, but like on our support side, there's a lot of people that reach out to Turn on questions like, how do I do this? How do I do this? And like a lot of it's in our support documentation, but like
Yep.
finding it is kind of
Yeah.
a pain. And
Yeah.
that's where like we're toying with these AI chatbots where it's like it can do it, and they're not perfect and they take a lot of massaging to get right, but like you don't have to squint that hard to see a world where every advisor has
Mhm.
their own support AI showing up for their customers in a way that's pretty special. And that no booking tool, by the way, can necessarily do, because it's very unlikely that the traveler would book all of their content with one site. And so they won't have all the information to be able to do that across their whole trip, which is supportive of the idea that I believe a travel advisor plus great technology will be better than anything they'll be able to find online.
Mhm.
That's my soapbox.
Um, so 2 thoughts. You were describing kind of the app experience of like your driver will be on the corner of here and here holding a sign. I think that I'll ask you, is there also a possibility that like AI gets to know the individual travelers in a way that's like you have okay, to get from this gate to this gate is a 10-minute walk, but you have a 90-minute layover. You usually stop at this type of restaurant to get food. Is that what you're looking for? Do you want to grab some water before you get on the plane? If yes, this is the closest place. Like I feel like there's an opportunity to it like starts to get to know people and patterns
Yes.
because I'm doing the same thing at every airport where I'm like zooming in on the terminals and trying to figure out what the food is because I'm starving, but I don't want to walk around everywhere and I just want to go to where I want to eat. But the reality is I'm always looking for something similar.
Yeah.
So like if any technology was paying attention, they're like, you want the In-N-Out burger, it's over there.
Yeah. Here's how to get there. Well,
Yeah.
and this is what you're describing is kind of like the holy grail of travel technology, right? It's like something that knows all those pieces and can bring it together to be that like, yeah, companion, AI companion,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, and it's where it's been like really hard because of the data problem, right? Like, how do you know where somebody eats while at the airport,
You
right?
have to track them.
You get, and like that gets hard, right? I mean, not to get too
Mhm.
technical, but like airports are buildings and GPS is not super accurate in buildings. And so like you might know within 300 feet of where they're at in the airport, but
Sure.
like there could be 5 restaurants there. And
Sure.
are they just at their gates or that? So it's like getting the data to actually know like where are you, what are you doing. I think you'll start to see some of that, like lounge access. I think is actually an immediate like a lower hanging fruit, because it's like you
Mhm.
have these credit cards. Maybe
Yeah.
we even know based on the credit card that they authorized or they paid with, like, okay, you get these
Yeah.
benefits, and like
That's
here's
the
the
other
one.
thing I'm always Googling, like, where's the American Airlines lounge? Is there one in this terminal? Do I have to go to the other terminal? Do I even have time to get over there? Is it a good one? Do they
Is it
have
worth
good
it?
food?
Yeah. Exactly. And like maybe you're comparing them. Like I often will be like, does this airport have a Centurion lounge? Should I do that? At what time of day is it super busy? Like, should I go to the United Club? Like it's that type of
Yeah.
thing. And
Yeah.
so the depth that you get to there will be largely determined based on the data that they have access to. And I think that's true just for travel generally. But I do think we start to see some sort of like travel companion. And I think obviously bias, but I think that travel advisors solve that data problem and unlock that type of traveling companion in a way that's going to be really hard for any other company to build, because every other company is competing with the other travel companies, and so nobody wants to share their data with one another. uh, we
Sure.
can, if there's, I think actually like travel questions of like OpenAI and LLMs, I think actually go downhill over time as we wrestle with copyright infringement and all these different things. But as a travel advisor, entering that data in and just training your own little AI on your client data starts to be able to deliver that pretty close to that experience in a way that I don't think is going to be easy for any of these other companies to do.
Another use case that I've heard just in other conversations that I'm personally excited about as a traveler, but also excited as an advisor is like, it is a really, really big part of our job to constantly know what's out there, what's new, where management has changed, what's recently been renovated, what used to get great reviews, and now suddenly it feels dated. We're not sending people to that hotel anymore. Like, this is hard. And the knowledge gathering and organization of all of those notes and insights and nuggets is a really big part of why I built the Hive.
Yep.
And also, the Hive is never going to do anyone's job for you. Like, it's still really difficult to keep up with all of that. And so another use case that another advisor has kind of brought up that I was like, "Oh, that would be amazing." It's like, if you have a client who travels with you once or twice a year and they've been your client for 5 or 6 years, like, what can AI do to look back at all of their past itineraries and say, based on all the hotels that this client has stayed at, and based on the feedback that the client has shared and you have saved in the Hive, we think that for their next trip, you're telling us they want to go here. Like, maybe it's not like go book this hotel, but like, here are 3 or 4 hotels you might want to check out first.
Yep. I yes.
Because it is impossible, like, unless you know every single city that your client is asking for super, super intimately, it is really hard to consistently be able to say, in this city, I put you here, in this city, I'd put you here, in this city, I put you here.
Yep.
Usually we can do that for 2 or 3 or 4 or however many places, but then we start getting to destination that is like, oh, I don't know that so well. Now I got to go ask my colleagues. Now I got to reach out. The client usually stays here. So where do I send them here? And it
Yeah.
starts getting fuzzy.
I think so two thoughts. One, just everything you described there, by the way, in terms of like management change, now it feels dated, which is like a very human emotion. Like those are all things that LLMs are not, at least with today's technology, not going to be able to do, because these they have to be trained
That's
all at
our
once.
feedback. That would
Yeah.
be us going and seeing it, or clients
Yeah.
coming home and telling us that. Like, that would have to be our input.
And that's where I think just going, mostly highlighting that, because there's, I think, a lot of anxiety, like you said at the beginning, around like, is an AI going to replace travel advisors?
I don't think so.
Absolutely not. Because of all the things you just said, that data is
Yeah.
changing so fast that
Yeah.
no LLM can actually detect those changes to give all the data is going to be 18, 20 months old. Would you want to
Yeah.
plan a trip that's 18 to 20 months old? Like
No.
half the restaurants you're going to go to won't be open. The hotel is going to feel dated because it's under new management. Like it's just not going to work, right?
Yeah.
So you can get broad strokes ideas, but like yeah. So I wanted to highlight that. But then to your point, you're exactly right that AI can start to help triangulate these different data sources. You take like the Hive, right, which has this kind of a hive mind, right, of all the different
Yep.
advisors. I think there's a huge network effect opportunity there. You combine that with historical data like a CRM like Turn that has all the previous trips that they've done down to like super high level granularity. Someday we'll probably build in reviews and things like that. You then start to layer on email, right? Where you're getting hundreds of supplier promotions, which you probably don't read, but like,
Holy crap.
but
That's a
like,
totally different topic. Yeah.
but like imagine a world where there's this like kind of assistant AI and it's like here's like 10 ideas for emails to send. You just got this like new promotion for 4 seasons. This client stayed at like 5 other 4 seasons. They love the tropics. It's in this location. Like, would you like to forward this on to them? Like, and how cool is that from a client perspective? Because now you've sifted through this information that they aren't going to find on their own, and you've thought of them, even though your AI helped you think of them.
Yep,
And
yep,
like now
yep.
you can deliver that like personalized follow up, right? And
This is,
that,
I mean, that right there, I know advisors who are doing this manually of like sending messages of like, hey, I saw this and I thought of you, or here's a promotion and are you interested in this? But I can't even fathom the time that they are spending because when they've shared with me, I'm like, that is a really great idea. And I sure do wish I had time to do that. But like, A, I can't even open all of the promotional emails coming in. B, even when it's not a promotion, but it's more of like, we added this hotel to our portfolio of an already, we have 500 hotels in our portfolio and we added this one. It's like, unless that's
cool.
relevant to me, unless that's relevant to like the next client email in my inbox, I cannot catalog that information personally. I
Yep.
can't. So I need it to be in a location where when I search it, it's relevant and I'm like, oh, that
Yeah.
could just got added to this portfolio a month ago. Now this is what I'm actually searching. Now this is relevant. Tell me more. Or, oh, I'm actually searching Paris and these three really great hotels have promotions. And oh, the promotions are tied to connecting rooms for families and I'm searching for a family right now. Like I need that information to like pop up when it's relevant
Yep.
for me to actually digest it and absorb it and like retain it. And
And
that's just not
yes.
happening. That's what I want the Hive to do someday, but again, not currently in development.
Yeah.
Like that's a pipe dream.
But that's exactly the type of thing that these large language models are really good at, is taking tons of information and either summarizing it or like making it queryable in a way that would be not really possible by email search today. And so I think that, and I actually think Turn has the building blocks of at least the email interface here to do that, where, and you can imagine really cool things where it's like, because we're gonna offer like email categorization, we'll know this is a supplier update email. And we could just say,
Okay.
okay, every supplier update email feed to this summarizing engine. And once a week, you get a email with like 15 bullet points of like, here's the
Yes.
300 emails you got from suppliers, and here are the 15 things we think you should know. And then you could query that in the future, right? Where you could be like, okay, show me hotels that are like, show me information about Paris from the past 30 days. Like you just type that in and it's like, here are all the emails that mention something about that. You could just click on it, go right to it.
Oh my
And it's,
gosh. Good. I thought I was gonna have to build like some sort of like news feed kind of like promotions and supplier updates in the Hive. But if you're gonna do this with AI, then I don't have to do that. That's great.
there we
Just
go.
take that
Like,
off my off my list.
it's where we need to figure out like, how do we get, what's the kind of collaboration around the data sharing and like
Exactly.
that. Cause yeah, I think
Because it's just
that's it.
the amount of data, whether it's client data, supplier data, like product data, destination data, like it is endless and overwhelming. It doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of the amount of data that is not only available to travel advisors, but that we actually have to sort through and understand and be experts about. And then not only do we know it and we've learned it and we've experienced it, but then when a client asks for it, we have to go be able to find it again. I
Yep.
mean, it's absolutely insane if you really, really dig into it and consider how much information there is.
Eh, yeah. And I think I'm really excited around like, how do you continue to like grow the industry? And I think this is a really interesting question of how do you take a new person in the industry and get them to that like hive mind knowledge level, because it's just such a strong learning curve, right? And it's like, where do I start? Do I subscribe for every single newsletter? Like, do I have to read everything? Do I
I
have to remember
mean,
everything?
yes, but no.
Yeah. And so I think that's where if you can start to subscribe to every single newsletter and you can sign up for all the things and just know you've got an AI that's going to start to summarize it for you and it's going to make it more accessible. And like eventually will actually help you connect the dots between this supplier promotion and what your clients are looking for. Like that I think that's pretty helpful.
Yeah, no, I think that we're getting promotion emails and updates on a very, very, very regular basis, and I always, like, feel bad slash semi annoyed that it's like, I can't sell a promotion out of thin air if I don't even have a client asking for what you're offering, and it feels like, I've never worked on, like, the product sales side, like, for a hotel or, like, any sort of, like, supplier side, so I don't know what their conversations are, but it feels like this sales strategy that's like, "Let's just blast it out, and our email list is 30,000 strong," or whatever it is, and if 1% of the people that we reach are looking for what we're offering, we've met our quota, or we've met our budget, or we've met whatever we're
Yeah.
trying to achieve. And so tick
Yep.
on to the next goal or metric that we need to meet for our boss. Like that's my experience of that sales method. And I just there's got to be a better way.
Well, and I think and I know you're trying to solve some of these problems with the Hive too, but like I think a lot about this because you talk to um, whether it's suppliers, whether it's tourism boards, right? And they're like, you just ask them these like super basic, or at least I thought they were super basic when I was like learning the industry. I'm like, how do you like find travel advisors? And they're like, oh, well, we've got to like
This
we
is
don't
a
know.
whole it's hard.
Yes.
I mean, nobody knows where we live. This is something that I actually hope to improve at the Hive is like I now know where everyone's based because it's just part of updating your profile. Like where
Yeah.
are you? And then can if a supplier or a rep is coming into town, can we just instead of email I'm currently getting emails for everything that's happening in Atlanta because that's where my host agency is. So I'm sending
Yeah.
like 2 emails or 3 emails per week being like, "Sorry, I don't live in
Not
Atlanta.
Atlanta.
I'd
Yeah.
love to join you for lunch. This looks fabulous, but I'm not flying in for this."
Sounds
Um,
warm. Yeah.
like if like we actually have the data of where everyone is. So like what if a supplier or a rep could just come say, "Inform everyone in the Chicago metro area that will be in town on this date and they can express interest in coming to our luncheon."
Yep.
Like or we wanna plan a road show and we don't know where to go. Where are the pools of advisors that we can find? "Oh, I had no idea there was a pool of advisors in the middle of North Carolina," or in the middle of the Midwest. There's actually a lot of us over here. So, like,
Yeah.
but nobody comes here because it's not like a major hub of a city.
Yes.
But, like, if a supplier came to Des Moines, there are 6 advisors I could call right now, but
Yep.
nobody comes to Des Moines.
Yep. I think there's like that huge geo problem, and like we're thinking about this. Like we should talk offline because we're like trying to think about do we do a road show and like where do we go? But the and I think the other part that you mentioned around the perfect promotion is one that gets to the right person at the right
The
time. And
right time. Yes.
for most advisors, that right time is like I have a client that expressed interest, and we think you can make this there's like a creepy way to do this and there's a magical way to do this. And hopefully we can figure out the magical way to do it, which is like, imagine you've got a client that fills out a new client request form, a new trip request form. And they're like, hey, we're thinking about these things, right? Maybe it's like, we're thinking about, a cruise. We're thinking like maybe Alaska, maybe the Caribbean. I don't know. Like just throw some ideas. Imagine like you're an advisor and now it's like you open up that trip, you're going to start your planning process. And it's like, here are the top 5 latest cruise offerings that you have for the Caribbean and Alaska. And like, maybe there's even like special promos because it's so accurate. I just feel like there's, oh, I don't know if that'll ever come to reality, but I just feel like there's so much opportunity to make it easier for these two sides to connect because it is just like
I
spray
feel
and
like
pray.
this is possible. So this actually came up for me like fairly recently in the last month that I have a family of 8, so they need multiple hotel rooms in London and Paris. So I'm doing the same research twice,
Oh,
right?
wow. Yeah. Yep.
And I'm trying to find rooms that can accommodate 2 adults and a child, and then 3 adults, and then just 2 adults, and then, like, is the pricing right? And then, like, "Oh, this hotel has a promotion, but does that promotion apply to this? Because it says families, but they're actually, like, 17-year-old twins, and I don't think that that actually applies because 'cause they're not children." And, I mean,
Yeah.
it was a nightmare to the point that I actually was I thought that I was like, okay, this promotion is valid on the dates that I need. And I think that this is going to work, to the point that I reached out to the property and then they were like, these are all the reasons that this promotion can't be applied. And so
Uh,
that meant that that hotel now priced out of their budget. And I spent all this time trying to find it. And so it was just like a nightmare. And then another email came in from my host agency of this random promotion going on in Paris. And I was like, this is the first time in 8 years that I have gotten an email about a hotel in a city that I was actively researching, and I booked it. The first time in 8 years that that has actually happened, that the promotion came in when I needed it and I booked it. But like in my mind, if you have a promotion, the promotion is always very specific for what it applies to, in terms of like extended stay or a family connecting room or whatever it is. It's always very specific about what it does and does not like apply to. And
yeah,
the dates are always very specific. So if I could go into any system, whether it's Turn, Hive, or otherwise, and say, I'm looking for Paris from approximately like May 31st to June 7th, um,
yeah,
for a family or for, connecting or whatever it is. And maybe it's just Paris over this week's time. Tell me, are there any promotions that are even remotely related to that? Like
yeah,
that search alone would elevate the service that advisors could provide clients, because I guarantee that there are promotions available that we're all missing simply because we don't know.
yeah.
We just don't even know that they're there. And then finding the offers and the promotions on each individual hotel's website is a nightmare. Reading all of the newsletters when 100% of it is irrelevant to me today in this moment doesn't work. And so it's just like, there has to be a better way. There has to
Yeah.
be a better way.
Yeah. It's just like so wild, right? The inefficiencies, and I think that yeah, it's just like such an opportunity, right, for these like kind of
It feels
marketplaces
like
to
a
solve that,
win-win-win,
right?
right? Like suppliers get in front of us when they need to be. We win because we're like, hey, client, there's a promotion at this really great hotel that A, you didn't even know about, and B, I'm saving you money. And then the
Yeah,
client gets what they want and what they need. And like it feels like a win-win-win.
exactly. Well, and
Like, so all the more reason of like, why is this still so hard?
yeah,
All stakeholders benefit here.
it is genuinely, I think, there's so much opportunity to make those win-win-wins happen, right? I think winning on the client experience, the surprise and delight moment, right? We like it's amazing experience at a price that like works for them. On the supplier side, I think that suppliers we've talked to recognize just the tremendous power of the advisor sales channel, but have not, the best tools that they have is to like send 30,000 emails a week and like hope that the right person opens it at the right time, or
Yeah.
like show
Yeah.
up to a conference and like hope that somebody traveled from Des Moines, Iowa to show up there and like
Yeah.
talk to them. Like it just is so broken for how much money is like, it's just
It's just
mind
really
boggling.
inefficient. It's
Yeah.
inefficient. It's so inefficient. Yeah.
So hopefully we can
Um,
fix that. Because
I
Hive and Turn,
feel
we're going to fix it.
I mean, I feel like there's a lot of potential here. Okay, so final question for you. I've already taken up far too much of your time, so thank you.
Of course.
Um, are there any downsides, like legitimate? "Ooh, we should probably know that this is coming." Like, are there any downsides to the future of AI in the way that not just the travel industry, but in the way that it's really going to impact travel advisors? And I encourage you to be honest, because we've talked about a million positives that are coming out of
Yeah.
this.
I don't want to sugarcoat. I think Glad Bernstrom has this like kind of saying where it's like, in the future, every professional that you work with, whether it's a lawyer, a doctor, or a travel advisor, like you will expect that they have AI. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that. If you miss this transition, you won't be able to be as efficient as other travel advisors. We know that there's a whole new generation of people coming into the space. It's going to be competitive. And I think if you don't at least think about how you're starting to integrate AI into some of these areas that we talked about today, uh, you'll probably get out competed. I would put a caveat on that, and that like I actually think you should be using AI in the back office, and you should do everything you can to make sure that your clients never feel like they're interacting with AI. because
Right.
that's the kind of core value prop. And I think that's actually another trap, is that people will go too far the other direction
Mhm.
and eliminate the value that they bring by like trying to have AI interact with their clients, or AI writing too many of their emails, and like suddenly the client's like,
Right.
well, if I'm just working with AI, I'll just go work with AI, right?
Yep, yep, yep.
um,
Mhm.
so
No,
I,
I
I
think that's
think
a really good distinction.
I think that will be important. I think that just as a society, we have a lot to figure out here. And so I would also say, I think about the New York Times is now suing OpenAI for the use of their content in these language models. You look at things like Reddit; they're being super clear that their data is not available for this. I think if you're a TripAdvisor, if you're some of these travel blogs, like, you're probably not going to be thrilled if OpenAI is just like indexing all your content to be able to answer an itinerary question. And so I think there's
Which
going to be a
they
lot of,
certainly are.
yeah, 100%. I mean, and like, so I think there's going to be a lot of that we have to figure out as a society. And so I think that actually is a net very positive thing for travel advisors, but it's a risk in that if you aren't careful about the things that you trust AI with, these models can actually get better over time. But I think that it's a little bit of a trap to say that you hear this a lot, they're the worst they'll ever be. There's no real regulation around the data that you can feed into these things. So you could argue they have the
Mhm.
most data now than they ever will. And so like maybe they aren't going to get constantly better. So I, I would be careful around leaning too much on AI for like the itinerary crafting without double checking it. I would be careful about integrating it, like relying on AI to have the answers. And that's like a very vague thing, but there's a lot of workflows that can apply to.
Right. Yeah.
Um, it's pretty good if you give it all the information, you ask it to reorganize it or to rewrite it. That's like pretty low risk, but trusting AI too much
Right.
is a risk. And then I do think that, again, like I said earlier, if you've positioned your branding as an advisor as being a more efficient way to book travel, and you really lean into that, like, hey, like, you just don't have to do the booking yourself, that's going to become a harder sell. Like, I do think there's going to be some startups that figure out how to do, like, type in a thing, we'll give you a cookie cutter itinerary and you can book it right away. And like, it's basically no work. It'll be a
Uh-huh.
cookie cutter itinerary. It won't be that interesting, but like, I
Yep.
think, I think that will probably be disruptive to some percentage of the market. I think that if you're doing luxury travel, I think if you're FIT travel, I think if you have a lot of relationships that you're leaning on to like craft these experiences, that's going to be really durable, and you don't need to worry as much.
The more custom, personal, human-centered, the better, it sounds like.
Yeah, and you look at like the macro trends, like Gen Z cares more about you. My wife just got this like custom made shampoo for our zip code based on our water softness. We've got like custom lawn care stuff that was like made for us. Like there's this whole, and we're not
Yep.
even Gen Z, there's this whole trend
Yep.
towards bespoke, like curated experiences, and AI is not going to do that. I think about the future of travel a lot like Stitch Fix. Stitch Fix is one of the best machine learning companies. Stitch Fix is like, they send you a box of clothes. I'm not super into fashion, as you can probably tell, so I don't do Stitch Fix, but like I know about it. And they have like crazy machine learning that comes up with recommendations, but then they have a human stylist that reviews every single one of those recommendations and picks what goes into the box.
I
And I
think
think, oh,
that's a fascinating example of a company that is really, really, really using AI, and I had no idea.
yeah,
And I think
and
that's what you gave is like, let AI support your back office, let AI support all the things behind the scenes so that your clients don't even know, but they still get that human-centered,
yeah,
interaction, and that's what Stitch Fix provides, is
ex-
like, you're engaging with a human,
exactly. And you
even
feel
if
like you know your
90% of the
stylist.
work was done by AI. That's
Yeah.
fascinating.
So I think that's the model I would encourage people to think about, is that, and it doesn't have to be scary. It is a little, I mean, I think as a society, we have a lot to wrestle with here. And like that will, especially, there's some like cause for like, we've got things to figure out. But I
Yeah,
think,
for sure.
I think as an industry, I'm bullish. I think AI is going to be a net positive thing in a lot of ways. And it's going to help, you know, it's going to help travel advisors actually compete with the OTAs in a way that they've never been able to, because they won't be drowning in this manual processes that have been kind of holding them back for so long.
Right. No, I think that that is the biggest takeaway for sure, and which I'm so excited about is because I think that travel advisors fundamentally we're really creative and we have so many ideas, and the reality is that it's like, well, all of these ideas are fabulous, but like who and when are gonna, like, who's gonna do all these things and when are they gonna do it? Because it can't be me because I'm too busy copy pasting passport names and dates of birth over here. You
Yep.
know, like,
Yep.
so if all of that is lifted off of our plates, I think that's why I'm so excited of like, think of all the things I could do with this time because I know exactly how I'd fill the time. And if there's a little extra time, like, I'll figure out how to fill it. Like, I'm not worried about that at all.
Exactly. Worst case scenario, you spend some time with like the family, or like you go on a
Worst case
vacation, right?
scenario.
Like, yeah, exactly. If
Right.
so, I think yeah, it's going to be a lot of upside. It's going to be, I think, a really fun time for the industry.
Amazing. David, thank you so much for just kind of diving into this and enlightening us a little bit with what's possible, what's coming, and what's coming specifically with Turn, but also the bigger picture of like what's coming in the travel industry and just in the world in general with AI. I sincerely look forward to checking in December or maybe by June to
We'll see.
see what the updates are and to just kind of, I feel like AI is a really fast-paced kind of situation right now, and so I feel like if we talk in 3 or 4 months,
Could be
this
totally
might
different.
be it could be totally different, which is really, really exciting. So,
Yes.
thank you for all of your insights and your expertise on the topic. It's really awesome to learn about.
Thank you for having me. It's been really fun, and excited for our check in sometime between 3 and 6 months.
Sounds